Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. I'm so excited for this video. This is my March reading wrap up where I talk about all of the books I read in March. And this month I read 11 books, which is a very good number for me. If I hit anywhere around 10 or higher, I'm like very pleased with myself. Overall, it wasn't the best reading month of all time. I didn't have too many 5 stars, only one 5-star, but a lot of 4s. So like really good books, just not so many amazing books. But overall, I had a good time and I read 1 fantasy, 1 historical fiction, 5 romances, 3 literary fictions, and then there definitely is some crossing of genres in there. Oh, also 1 thriller. So first up, I read Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood, and I loved this book. I read it in my Ali Hazelwood reading vlog along with another book that is in here. So if you want more, like way more detailed thoughts, you can check out that video. It's a super fun vlog, my first vlog ever. But yes, I loved this book. I gave it a 4.5-star rating, and it was just so good. It is a YA romance book, and it is about chess rivals. So our main character, Mallory, she was a chess prodigy, but then something happened and she pretty much took a break for like 4 or 5 years. But when she graduates high school, she's becoming an adult. I think she's like 18 years old. She goes back to chess to help support her family financially. And I actually loved the chess aspect. The chess aspect and all the competitions and her getting better and her improving and her finding herself within the chess world, as well as just like finding herself in general, was like the main plot of this story. And I thought it was so interesting. I was so hooked. I don't know, it was just like a really good part of the story. I find that Ali Hazelwood does that so well. Like, she writes other plots besides just the romance that keeps me engaged, and I think that's why I tend to love her books. But there of course also was a romance. It was like kind of small of romance, like it was little crumbs here and there, but that just made it so much better. Like every little crumb I got, I ate it up. So the main male character, the love interest, is the reigning world chess championship. So it's like chess rivals to lovers. And it was just such a good romance. The man was swoony and dreamy. He had some amazing quotes that literally had me like blushing, kicking my feet. There was really good tension and angst, and I thought the romance was like a perfect like slow burn build up. It felt real. It felt like I connected to the characters, and it was just like a really fast, quick, easy story. I thought it was super binge worthy, like such a fast, funny, fun book to read. I just love Ali Hazelwood's style of writing. Like I said, I think she's really funny. There is one thing to note about this that I think prevented me from giving a 5-star, is that it is YA, and it wasn't too YA for me, but there are a lot of like Gen Z, like pop culture references, like very young, a little bit silly. So I think that does turn some people off from this book. It didn't turn me off. The thing that made it not a 5-star was that, you know how in books they try to give the characters more depth and maybe give them something emotional that they're working through, just like a bigger problem in their life. Like they were hinting at a bigger problem in our main character Mallory's life the entire time, and it was being like very built up in my opinion. But then when the reveal happened, it just didn't seem like so important and like as deep and meaningful as I was expecting. And that's not to say that it wasn't, because I'm not going to judge what someone's gone through, but I just think it's like a classic case of it being a YA book. Like it just doesn't go as deep as a, you know, a non-YA book would. And that's just my only complaint. Otherwise, I loved this one and I would highly, highly, highly recommend. It was one of my favorite books of the month, and it is one of my favorite romances like in a long time. Then, like I said, I filmed a Ali Hazelwood reading vlog this month, so I of course read another Ali Hazelwood book. I read Love on the Brain, and I really liked this one as well. I loved it. I gave it a 4.25-star rating, so I didn't love it quite as much as Check and Mate, but I still really did. I thought it was just like a really good rom-com. It was fun, it was fast, it was flirty, it was sexy, like it had all of the good things. Like I said when I was talking about Check and Mate, Ali Hazelwood does a really, really good job about making other plots that keep me interested and engaged in the story. I often find myself in romance books getting bored if it's just the romance. So there's a lot going on in here. This is one of Ali Hazelwood's classic STEM romances. So in this one, the 2 main characters are working together on a project at NASA. So the female main character is a neuroscientist and the main male character is a lead engineer, and they're working on building this like helmet for astronauts that can like sense their neurons in their brain. I don't know. I don't really understand what exactly they were doing, but I do remember finding the science and like the brainiac part of the book to be really fascinating. And just, it's like a classic Ali Hazelwood book. If you haven't read her writing before, It's very quirky, it's very unique, it's very different, it's very funny. She loads on like the metaphors and like references, and I laugh out loud at her writing. When I read Love Hypothesis, I remember not liking it, and maybe I just like wasn't used to her writing at that point. Now I love it, and it makes the romance books so much better in my opinion. This wasn't my favorite actual romance, like the love story in here wasn't my favorite of all time, and I think that's why I didn't rate it higher. Overall, I just really enjoyed myself with this one. I thought it was cute, I thought it was sweet. I remember the ending was really like heartwarming, it endeared me, and I just think it's a good rom-com. Then I read The Wicked King by Holly Black, which is the second book in the Folk of the Air trilogy. It's a YA fantasy trilogy. It's a very like whimsical, fantastical, mythical fantasy series, and it's very heavy on the politics. It is not very heavy on the romance, so don't go into these books thinking that. It's a little bit of a subplot throughout the entire series so far. I'm assuming it will continue to be so in the third book, and subplot is honestly very generous. It's like subplot. And even at that, like, I don't know if I would call it a romance. My immediate thoughts on this book is that the series is so like clever and scheming, and like I said, it's very politics heavy, so everyone is like betraying everyone and their secrets, and it's just very clever. I would say this book got right back into the action from the first book, but even though it did, it was still a little bit slow in the beginning, but then in the last third of this book, like the last 100 pages, it was so good. I couldn't put it down. I had to finish and like read it immediately. Like it was just got crazy at the end. And then, oh my God, something crazy happened in this book. Like, I'm not gonna give even anything away, but just know it was such a ride at the end. I really loved it. I just know that I have a really good time with these books. I think they're not too serious. They have all these different creatures, and it's very easy to understand, although it's politics heavy. It's not like this complex world building that hurts your brain. It's very easy, and it's just a good time, and I had a lot of fun with this. I rated it 4 stars. Next, I read Lizzie Blake's Best Mistake, and I really loved this book. It was my second highest rated book of the month. I give it 4.75 stars. I don't quite know why I couldn't give it a 5-star. I just think like there was just something that made me think it wasn't a 5-star. Like it just didn't feel like a complete rounded 5-star. But nonetheless, it was very amazing and very close to one. So this is a accidental pregnancy romance story. If you know me, you know I love these books. I have read so many of them. There's just something about them that I think is really cute and like warms my heart and just, I don't know, makes me giddy. I don't know why, but I love this trope so much. And this was like my perfect classic one of those. The beginning was a little bit slow for me and it took me a while to get going, but once I got into it, I was so hooked. I finished this on a airplane in like 2.5, 3 hours, just completely binged it. And I remember wanting there to be more of the book. Like I was almost done with the book. I could feel that it was coming to a close and I was checking like how much was left because I didn't want it to be over. There is just like perfect tension in here, and it's a little bit like forced proximity, and there's that tension of them wanting each other so badly, but they're not like giving in, and it just builds up so perfectly. This book is also very spicy. Like it is the spiciest book I have read in a while. I think it is good spice. I like spice in my books. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Also, the pregnancy aspect of this story is not so there. Like I've read books with this trope where it's more of a main plot. Of course it is a main plot, but it's not like overwhelming. Like if you don't like the trope, there's a possibility that you would still like it. I think you would. The other thing that I take away from this book that I don't take away from all books with this trope is that I absolutely loved the romance in it. The way that the main character, the main male character, his name is Rake, and the female main character is Lizzie. The way that Rake loved Lizzie, it was like some of the best I've seen in a romance book. Like I think that everyone wants to be loved in the way that he loved Lizzie. And I just think I wasn't expecting to take that away from like a silly, sexy rom-com, but I really did. Like I truly thought it was beautiful, and it's how I want to be loved. I definitely know that. So it was just like a really cute, lovely love story on top of being a fun, sexy rom-com with a pregnancy trope. So if that sounds like anything you would like, I suggest pick it up. Like I said, I loved it. I gave it a 4.75. Then Lizzie Blake's Best Mistake put me in the pregnancy romance book mood, and I had this lying around, which is Ready or Not by Cara Bastone, which is another pregnancy romance, so I decided to read it. Although I did not love this one as much. I gave it a 3.75 star rating. And I think my issue with this is that it doesn't follow the specific formula, or not the specific formula, the typical formula of a pregnancy romance that I love. I would just say that the romance, the two people that the romance is between, is not always what it is in these types of books. And then also the like situation between the mother and the father is not always what it is in these types of books. I don't think that's gonna give away too much. And then other than that, the reason why I didn't love this book is because I wouldn't really say it's romance. There is of course romance in it, but it reads to me more like a women's fiction or a literary fiction following our main female character. I forget her name. What's her name? Eve. So it kind of just follows Eve's story, and it's kind of like a character study on her, or I don't know, just following her journey through what she's experiencing, and not as much like a couple we're focusing on. We're focusing on her and what she does and who she talks to and who she falls in love with and how she is going through this journey, which is different than what I typically look for in this type of romance. I still really enjoyed my time with this book. I thought it was cute, I thought it was heartwarming, and I did like still want to keep picking it up and reading it. And yeah, it was still really good. That's why I gave it a 3.75. Then I read Happy Place by Emily Henry, and this book might have been my least favorite book of the month. I think it actually was, which, you know, very unpopular opinion here. Everyone loves Emily Henry, everyone loves Happy Place. For me, it was just the most mid book I have ever read, like truly mid. I didn't really ever find myself liking this book or disliking it. Like often I will of course feel one way or the other. Like this I gave a 3.5 star rating, and usually when I rate a book 3.5, it's because there's a bunch of negative thoughts I had about it, and I really didn't have any negative thoughts about this book. It was just like nothing that made me like it either. Now, of course, I do have like a little bit of negative thoughts, like of course I have to if I dislike the book, but overall, like I said, I just feel like very about it, like mid. The things that if I had to say I disliked about it would be, I think that I don't love the way the love story was told. Like this is a romance, and the romance is told kind of backwards and it's told in fragments, and I just think the way it's written didn't allow me to connect to the characters. Like we're supposed to believe that they are this epic love, they are meant for each other, they are so good for each other, and you just never get to see that. Like I don't know how people see that when they're never shown it or they're never told it. Like I don't know, you kind of hop in at the end when they're already broken up, and I never believed in them because how am I supposed to? That is how I felt. I also think it was pretty much no plot, and I guess that's the point of this book. It's very character study, love story, fiction, like no moving plot, which is fine. I think that's the type of book that Emily Henry like typically writes, but it just wasn't my cup of tea per se. I will say I did love certain things in this book. I thought it was beautiful, like imagery and description about summertime, and the book takes place in Maine during the summer, and it's really beautiful. I think it talks about friendship and female friendships very well. And then also there were of course beautiful quotes. Like there's no denying that she's an amazing writer. I just like don't connect to the quotes. Except I did tear up at one point, and I think it wasn't even like related to the characters or this book specifically. I think she had like a very poignant quote about grief or something like that, and it got me and I got choked up a little. But besides that, I didn't really connect, and yeah. Next up, I read The Push by Ashley Audrain, and I was so excited to finally get to this book because it had been on my TBR for a while, and I picked this up and I loved it. It is a very psychological thriller, and I, to be honest, didn't really know the difference between the types of thrillers. Like, I'm gonna explain it and it's gonna seem kind of obvious, but like, I just didn't really know. So this is a psychological thriller, and psychological thrillers pretty much have to do with the characters and sort of like what's going on in their brain and like maybe the way they act, and it's very much in their brain and in their thoughts, whereas mystery thriller is, you know, you're solving a murder or you're solving a missing persons case, like the police are involved. It usually involves like crime, and this is not that type of book. It's psychological, and it's all in your thoughts and creepy and eerie, and you know, gives you an unsettling feeling. But I loved it so much. I believe that this author writes typically thrillers about motherhood, and this one is no different. It's about motherhood, and more specifically the relationship between a mother and a daughter. I think that this book was so addictive, so readable. It wasn't like very, you know, I think the word is like popcorn thriller. Like, it's not like that. There's not thing after thing after thing after twist and twist, but I was just so like engrossed in the story and what was going on. And People say it's very disturbing. I didn't find it to be too disturbing. I think if you really think about it, it is very disturbing, but I just didn't really want to like think too hard on it. I think what happens in here is possible. I think it's the unlikely scenario that will happen between a mother and daughter relationship, but it's definitely possible, and it could freak you out. But I love this book. I gave it 4 stars. It was super easy to read. I wouldn't say it was fast paced, but like I was just so wanting to see what was gonna happen. The only thing, like the reason why this wasn't a 5-star, because I loved it the entire time, was that I was left wanting more. Like the ending just, I was like, what? That can't be the ending. I would really recommend this book. I think it was a really good thriller, and a different type of thriller. Then I read the Book of Lost Names by Kristen Harmel. Unfortunately, I do not have my copy of this, but I loved this book so much. I gave it a 4.5-star rating. I read this book in one day on vacation in Mexico, and I was saying multiple times, like sitting on my lounge chair, speaking to my family, I was like, this book is so good. My book is so good. And like, that is just such a good feeling when you could be like, oh my God, loving this book. And that's exactly how I felt the entire way through of this book. I thought it was so bingeable. And I don't know if I've said it yet, but it was historical fiction, and it was a historical fiction that got right into the action and the plot. So if you were looking to get into this genre, I would actually highly recommend starting with this book, because I didn't find it slow at all. You didn't really have to get too much knowledge or information. Like, you got right in on the action, and I found that it was like plot after plot after plot. Like, things were moving the entire time, and I was so interested and engaged the entire time. Like I said, I finished it in 24 hours, and this is a World War II historical fiction. It takes place in France, and it has to do with forgery that happened during the war. So pretty much all the persecuted people, Jewish people, but then other people who were aiding the Allied cause, or just, I don't know, anyone who couldn't travel through Nazi-occupied regions safely needed these false papers to travel safely. So our main character was an important forger of these documents during the war, and it pretty much follows her journey throughout the war. I just thought it was so interesting, so engaging, so good. The reason why it wasn't a 5-star, because although I like completely binged it, completely devoured this book, there just felt like something was missing. Like, Kristen Hanna, for example, I've read a bunch of her historical fiction books, and I think she takes it to like a different level that really makes me connect, and I sob in all of her books. And although this book that I read, The Book of Lost Names, it was sad and it covered emotional topics, like devastating topics, I didn't cry at all. And I just think, you know, maybe it just wasn't written in a way that could allow me to connect deeper. Maybe it was that. There was another thing that kind of felt like it was bothering me in the entire book. I just kind of felt like the main girl in the story, of course she had a hard life, like she was going through awful things. It was such a terrible time, but I just felt like things were working out too well for her. Like, it was almost too easy. Like, the story worked out too well for such a devastating time. I don't know if that makes any sense. That was like a nagging thought I had the entire time, and I couldn't get rid of it. And it made me bump it down to a 4.5. But overall, I really loved this book. I would recommend it. I just think it's a really great historical fiction, especially if you're a new reader to historical fiction. The next book I read in March was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This was a highly anticipated read for me. I've had it for quite a long time. I am happy that I finally got to this. Unfortunately, I didn't love it. I gave it a 3.75-star rating. So my general idea on this book is that I can see that it is an amazing book. It is well written. It is such a cool concept, a fascinating concept. And there's so many like beautiful quotes, well written, like I said. There's a lot of life lessons in here, all of that. Like, it's a really good book. It's like a work of art. But I personally didn't love it. So I did like this book. I just didn't really like it or love it, which is what a 4-star is for me. So I had to bump it down to a 3.75. And it felt too long. It felt a little too repetitive. I just don't think it's for me. I think it's very lyrically and poetically written. And I think when books are loved for that reason, I'm usually not gonna love them. Like, I need more than that. Like, beautiful writing isn't gonna do it for me. I either need to really connect to the characters, or have a good plot, or have a good romance, or have a good mystery. This book was just really hard for me to rate and think about critically, because, like, I don't know, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I feel like I'm babbling. I can't really explain my thoughts on this book. It was like fine for me. I just don't think it hit as well as I thought it would, because there's such rave reviews about it. this is literary fiction, I believe, so it's not meant to be super plot driven. It's supposed to be character based. It's supposed to be like a character study, but like I just found myself the entire time being like, what's the point of this book? And like, I don't really think there was a point of this book. It was just like beautiful writing about someone's life, and there was a little bit of love and there was a little bit of learning, and like that was that. But that is just not my type of book, unfortunately. I was also like waiting to love this book the entire time. I liked it the entire time, but I was waiting for that moment where I was like, oh, it's getting good, I'm really loving it, and that never happened. I'm feeling like my thoughts are really jumbled right now, so if you want more succinct of a review, go to that video I was talking about, because I definitely, I think, did a better job there. Then I read My Last Innocent Year by Daisy Alpert Florin, and this is described as a coming-of-age story on a college campus, and again, this is literary fiction, so it's kind of just a character study on our main character in her last year of college. There is a lot of different things that go on, and like themes, and I guess you could say plots. We have an affair between a student and a professor, we have a sexual assault, we have the matter of consent, like that is a big theme throughout this. There is just college life, there is coming of age, there is grief, there is parent-children relationships. There's just a lot of things going on in here. It's just like all explored. And I actually loved this book. I ended up liking it a lot. I gave it 4 stars. By like the halfway mark, I just found this book to be addictive, and I don't know what it was, because typically I'm only like rushing through a book, which I was doing that with this. Like I didn't want to put it down. I thought it was so engaging, but that like usually doesn't happen to me with literary fiction. And I just found it to be really good. I remember when I finished the book, I felt really like satisfied with the ending. I thought it turned out to be a really like beautiful story, a kind of complete tale, and it wasn't like a happy ending, but it was a satisfying ending for me. I have trouble talking about literary fiction books sometimes because they're like inherently not about something happening. Like they're not about this big fantasy plot or historical fiction, or like, you know, they're just about someone and their life, and that is what this is. And I liked it, but like I don't know what else to tell you about it. I don't know how to describe it, but it was a short book, it was a good story, I really liked it, and yeah, 4 stars. So my last book of the month was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt, and this was actually my favorite book of the month as well. I gave it 5 stars. So this is another literary fiction book. I realized towards the end of the month that the latter half of my month was very full of literary fiction. I don't typically read that genre. It's a little harder for me to love it, but I really did love it. The only thing I knew going into it was that it was like supposed to be very heartwarming, endearing, and that the octopus was the narrator of the story. And the octopus is the narrator of the story, but not like the entire story. He is one perspective, and I loved the octopus. His name is Marcellus. He was so funny, so cute. I feel like his role in the book was kind of to comment on humans, and I thought the way he watched humans from his like aquarium, what is it called? Aquarium, not a cage, whatever, aquarium, oh my god, what is it called? Fish tank, aquarium tank. His aquarium tank, he just kind of gets to watch humans all day long, and he has like a lot of funny insights on them, and I just, every time I got to his chapter, I was like looking forward to it. It was so much fun. And the other perspective is a 70-year-old woman. She's a widow, and her name is Tova, and I loved her. She was one of my favorite characters to read in a while. I thought she was so funny. I thought she was strong. I thought she was so kind, and I just thought it was such a refreshing like point of view for a book. I didn't think I would love a book, you know, from an older woman's voice and perspective, but I thought it was like really fun and different, and I loved that the story was told from her point of view. This book is very cozy. It's so heartwarming. Like when I say heartwarming, I truly mean like there were multiple times where I was like, ugh, like so heartwarming. It was so cute. It was so endearing. It was funny. It made me shed a tear. It made me laugh. It made me smile. Like, you know, it did all of the things, and I just really loved it. Like I thought it was such a beautiful, incredible story. Like it was so much love and connection and family, and it kind of follows a bunch of different people. And in the beginning, you're like, how are all these people going to make for one story and make sense together? And in the end, it comes together so well. I feel like all of the characters were kind of feeling a little bit lost in life, a little bit lonely, and they needed something else, like something was missing. And by the end, it just, everything is kind of mended and fixed, and it was such a beautiful story. Like truly 5 stars, would recommend to everyone. And this is like that kind of 5-star book that is like a true 5-star because it's such an incredible story. It's not like it's so bingeable, I can't put it down. Like, that is not the energy of this book. I actually think it's better to put this book down. Like, it's one you want to like spend your time with, go a little bit slow. Like, you don't need to finish this front to back in one day. I think, you know, it's cute to pick up and put down, say hi to the octopus again, like all of those things. And this book is described as full of heart and humor, and I couldn't describe it better myself. Like, it kind of does feel like a warm hug, and it's just a really, really, really phenomenal book. I highly recommend, and that is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. Okay, so those are the 11 books that I read in the month of March. Like I said, I was able to finish my complete March TBR, which was 6 books, and then of course read a little bit extra. I'm hoping that in the month of April I can finish my TBR as well, or at least come pretty close. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books before, what you thought about them, if we agree, if we disagree. I would love to know. Let me know in the comments, and thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more book content. I will see you guys in the next one.